I have no idea where we are right now. I'm having ricochet experiences of time, and I'd say I have this. I mean, one, I'm getting all of the postmenopause symptoms, and one of them is tinnitus. Um, it's so frustrating. Anyway, so to sleep, to get to sleep, I'll put on a podcast, and if you're on Rumble or Spotify, which is where I listen to Avita's stream, you really guys really have to listen to Avita's stream. She's doing some great work. Anyway, and remember, I was on there. I mean, I'll be listening to Avita's stream, and then I'll fall asleep, and I'll wake up at 3 in the morning or something, and the algorithm, the algorithm will have taken me somewhere completely different. I mean, it's this kind of wild way of finding out about the existence of shows you would never look up in the first place. And believe me, it's sometimes they go into my dreams, and then I wake up and I'm saying, I don't even know what I just heard. There's one about a CEO that's always interviewing guys, and I wake up to these nice, like, resonant men's voices talking about, how to run their entrepreneurial enterprises, and I think I'll take notes, and I fall back asleep. So it is, I think, an appropriate mode to be encountering the world right now, because indeed, what I mean, not even, I don't know. I would see, you remember how the kids used to say, ooh, 6 months ago, the timeline, what timeline are we in? I don't know if there's timelines left, right? Because one of the podcasts that I woke up listening to was Professor Jordan Peterson talking to Charlie Kirk about things that had happened back in the dark ages of 2015 and 2016 and 2017. I was suddenly in this kind of time warp because I was there. The dog wasn't. He's only 4. And I could remember things that they were talking about, but they had a completely different version of of how particular parts of that event went. And I've spent the entire week haunted by this feeling of being in multiple versions of the story at once. And we got to figure this out. We said in the ad for tonight, it's like we don't know where we are anymore in the world. Like, where here be dragons. Help us map them. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. Yeah, we're not going to tell you what we were just talking about while the credits were playing, because then that would let you know somewhere where we are.
Had to do with vampirism and not me. I'm okay this week.
Oh,
So
I don't know.
weird
I mean,
week.
one, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We need you. We really need you, audience, chat. Get in
We
here,
need
because
we need clarity.
we are so lost, right? You will have noticed after we did what at 6 how many episodes did we do on categories? We like spent February and March desperately clinging to the problem of how do
It
we
was
think of.
about it was about five, I think,
I
5 or
think it was more
6.
than that. It was like naming
Yeah,
things, right?
yeah.
And then we fell down some rabbit hole or other, and then came out at Easter, and I I I'm still not sure where we are. I the feeling of being out on the edge of, it's not even the narrative anymore. It's like a narrative would feel like it had some kind of linear
You would think,
progression that
yeah.
you could test. I've got someone in the kitchen who knew I was starting right now. No, but he's not making tea. My husband clearly, desperately wants to become part of our streams, don't you, dear? Now it's gone all quiet.
Now it's quiet.
One day we'll bring him in. This is my proof that there is somebody else in the house. Because otherwise, we might just go bonkers completely. It's like, where are we? Anyway, have you sensed this, that, it's like, not just there's been a disturbance in the force, but the feeling of being in our metaphor is the mosaic, and looking for all the patterns and fragments and connections and stuff. And I was for real sort of spooked when Jordan Peterson and Charlie Kirk were talking about they were doing. What was funny was when I woke up into their conversation, I wasn't sure whose show it was.
Oh,
like whether it was Peterson's or Kirk's, right? Who was interviewing who? Because it was hard to tell. I eventually figured out it was Peterson was supposed to be interviewing Kirk.
Okay. Weird timelines. I was thinking of something as you were talking about not knowing what timeline you're in or what time it is, and being in a kind of a time warp, and I'm reminded that people have said if God lives outside of time, he's not subject to his own laws. He created that for us because we needed a timeline, right? Because that keeps us sane, and helps us grow and progress, in spirit. And I thought at the same time, people have also said, if you see God, your mind couldn't take it, and he would just basically just explode, right? This is how God sees time. He sees it all at once. So this confusion that we're feeling right now isn't even a microscopic fraction of the reality of God, right? But I don't know why that just popped into my head. I'm not sure
I like it.
I'm not sure it's relevant, but yes, I do feel like 10 years, it feels like 50, and it feels like 5 days at the same time. That's what it feels like. And I don't know if it's because we have so much information coming at us and so much change coming at us all at once, or if something else is going on at a more supernatural level. I don't really know.
Okay, you're saying many things that are very important in all of that. One, okay, chat, you're just going to guys have to help us take notes, because we're going to keep forgetting ourselves in the midst of all of this. I think there are like 5 things that Casey just said that we need to mark. But VA Boston is saying, sailing on the edge of the map, past the border. Is there an endless fall or a wrap around to bring things together?
Right.
Perfect.
Feels
yes,
like perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is it? So one, I think we're at the 100 days or thereabouts of the new administration. Week. Yeah. And so, obviously a lot of it is the number of things that have come through those executive orders, including as of today, no more Big Bird. I was thinking
that's $1 billion industry. I had this discussion with somebody 20 years ago. They keep trying to take money away from Big Bird. I'm like, this isn't going to work. Have you seen how much they charge for their merchandising on kids' clothes and toys and books and movies?
So you're saying Big Bird's okay? Well, that's
I think Big Bird's can retire on the residuals. Yeah, I think he's fine.
What the thing is, then I go back. I go into my pictures and I start looking for Big Birds. And you guys check out my Telegram channel, Fencing Bear at Prayer, because I'm often like collecting things. I sort of learned this from Owen. Bear World will understand this, right? You start throwing stuff into your social media and you realize, oh, that's the theme. That's the theme that's coming out here. Anyway, the Big Bird announcement came out this morning, or AKA PBS and NPR. And I remembered that had been a feature of, I don't think it was a Trump campaign. Wasn't it a Romney campaign?
Which one?
The 2012, right? That there was something about, so-and-so is going to kill Big Bird.
No, this was George Bush. This was, I mean, they've been threatening this for years, because the conversation I had was when right before George Jr. Became president in 2001, right? So the election was the election of 2000, and that's when this discussion. So I'm sorry. See, I am in a time warp. it's 25 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
not 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they
I'm
were
sure
talking
it
about it
happened more
then.
recently too, but
Yeah,
this is
they keep bringing it
the
back.
Big Bird
That's
is
yeah.
constantly threatening to be, made into Thanksgiving dinner or something. I guess.
Oh,
But this is okay, so
that's like a
one,
Seth MacFarlane joke. You just put that in the Family Guy or something.
I'm thinking, we're doing a public service here. We just like you and I sitting here on our porch, rocking in the rocking chairs, trying to remember the past.
Uh, that's an image. Yeah,
Right.
I'm
Well,
not
no,
ready for the home yet, but okay.
we're old enough, trust me. That I started the stream with saying I have tinnitus, which is why I'm listening to all those podcasts at night so I can sleep.
Oh,
Right.
I don't know what that says about the podcast, but I'm glad it's helping you sleep.
It's the voices. It's having voices.
Yeah.
It and and it's that I'll use. I mean, I can use like books that I've read before. I like P.G. Wodehouse is quite nice. I was listening to a lot of
Oh,
Dorothy Sayers a while ago. It's just having the and I'm obviously quite verbal person, so listening to the crafting of the words and the rhythm of the sentences and stuff like, I guess it's my, I used to, part of me thinks, oh, I'm getting really old and I have to listen to something all the time. But I realized I used to go to sleep to my records playing, right? Talk
I used
about
to go to sleep
old,
to the
right?
radio.
I used to
Yeah.
have, the actual like, LPs that I would put on, the record player in my bedroom when I was in high
Hmm.
school. I memorized Jesus Christ Superstar that way because I'd
Yeah,
listen
that's
to
a
it.
good one.
So, or I'd watch television and fall asleep, but I prefer to just having the sound, right? So I'm
Hmm.
listening to these things, and I'm also, it's interesting what the algorithm keeps feeding me, because and what podcast world is actually, which is a lot of guys. So I realize it's
Yeah,
also men's voices. I'm falling asleep to men's
I
voices.
find men's voices very soothing, and
Yeah.
I don't find women's voices soothing at all. And it's not because I'm a
Sorry,
misogynist.
we can't
It's
do
the
anything
pitch.
about it. Yes, it's the pitch.
It's yeah, it's the pitch. The pitch. The men's voices are deeper. That's more soothing.
Well, but the thing is, I think also it's like it's almost like a sort of cradle sort of situation where you're listening to your parents talk or you're listening to your dad,
Oh,
right? And
yeah,
just
that's interesting.
I miss my dad a lot. It's 20 years now,
Hmm. Yeah,
and that's hitting kind of hard. But the that we are. So wait, we lost ourselves there. Scroll back.
we're old.
We're
That's what we
old, right?
old.
And no, and the thing is, so it's like the youngins are old enough now. So someone like Evita, she's 25 or so, to have well formulated opinions about what's going on. But as she
Hmm.
was talking about, you realize I do listen to her regularly because I was listening to it this morning. She made some excellent points. Um, that she's talking about how she can't remember 9/11. So
Hmm.
the talking about being that was 24 years ago. It's 24 years
Yes.
ago, right? So there are people
Yep.
who are young adults now who weren't alive in 9/11 or were little and therefore have no memory of it. And yet that still, I assume for you too, it feels like current events in the sense of, was it really 25 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I miss it all the time. I say 10 years ago, 20. Wait a minute, that was longer than that. It's
Right.
because I don't know, the older you get, of course, the faster time goes. It feels like that anyway. Of course, it's that's not literally true, but it feels like it's that. So you'll find yourself saying things like, "Oh, it was 20 years ago," when in fact it was 30 years ago,
Right.
or 30 when it was 40 or more. It doesn't feel like time is as expanded. It feels like it's been compressed.
Well, I think there's let me see whether there's anybody else in the Telegram chat. Just checking, guys. Okay, no. Um, there's a biology to it, I suspect too, because you sort of stop growing after 25 or 30. Um,
I mean, some of us keep growing this way. Need to
well, yeah, but that
shrink.
you feel your, so this is why I think the postmenopause time now, and like there are ways in which I trying to not be angry at the fact that I'm 60 and certain things are starting to happen like tinnitus, which I've done the grok searches. It's not going to go away. and that is frustrating because it's like, okay, there's not something that you can, do a workout for, or, you can do meditations so that you don't pay attention to it so much and blah, 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 blah. But guess what? You've
Mm-hmm.
got it, right? And
Hmm.
um, it started a year or two ago. And that, I think from, 25 till now, I've been on a kind of I know who I am, right,
Yeah.
mode,
Right.
right? And then there is something else that changes around 60. You get another big one at 82, apparently, right? That they're big sort of
Hmm. 20-year leaps, huh?
20, yeah, kind of, yeah, scores. The scores are matter, right? The four score of our life, and the four score of the life of republics, or countries, which we're all leading
Yeah.
to. Anyway, so the sense of, we can sit here remembering things that are clearly repeating on us, like Big Bird,
Yeah.
or uh, you know uh, the thing that I mean, not terrifically shocked and horrified, but saddened to have Peterson and Kirk talking through was they were, in fact, talking through what I think it's a decade ago now, what it was like on campuses in 2015, which was, of course, when I made my famous Three Cheers for White Men post that
Mm-hmm.
got no traction until 2016. But there you go. And thus just the explosions that were going on. And Charlie was talking about how he was young then. I mean, he's young now, but
Mm-hmm.
he was just out of he was just out of high school and got
Right.
rejected from West Point, so he wasn't in college. And so he started setting himself up, going around campuses and, putting the table up and having the debates and stuff like that. And
He's
some
very good at that. I watched him because his debates are substantive. He's not just there to troll people.
Yeah, well, it's so, I mean, between him and Peterson, they were talking through how he got the college education that none of the people that I teach do, and I'm like, I'm really irritated by that because I know my students are getting an education, right?
Yeah.
No, seriously, my students get an even better education than Charlie Kirk can give you by setting up an event, right? Because
Yeah.
to be in my class and to work through with me, you know, good several hundred pages of reading for sure in a quarter, with
Mm-hmm.
me doing this to you for hours and
Mm-hmm.
hours and hours, 3 hours a week for 9 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in the time that I've been teaching, we've shortened it by a week, which is not, it's like you feel it. You feel the loss of yet a little bit more of the time that you have with
Mm-hmm.
people in class. That this kind of learning is, I think what Charlie's clearly learned to do is sort of bouts, right? And in
Yeah.
that sense, he's
Yeah.
very scholastic, right? It's like he did like Abelard, and he showed up on campus and, proved that he could best all the professors. Okie dokie.
Well, and
Right?
okay, and well, he does it very well. I'm not saying
He's
it's not in a
practiced a
limited,
lot,
it's in
clearly.
a limited capacity, right? The topics he's talking on, they wouldn't be as substantive as your class, and certainly not necessarily as disciplined. Like you just pointed out, hundreds of pages. You're not just reading it, right? You're analyzing it
I'm
and
teaching
you're
you
writing
how to
about
think
it,
about it and read it.
right?
And this is, so in my time warp experience of what this has all been like for me recently, it's like, I think, one, thanks to a number of the executive orders that have come down in the last 100 days, we can breathe again about certain
Yes.
issues, which is important. The universities are, of course, being called to account for what they've been doing in the last 10 years. And, the University of Chicago
The last
has,
50 years, but yeah.
well, but the crisis was in the last 10 years, right? Because what the
And go
thing,
ahead.
the thing that Kirk pointed out, which it was a nice sort of rehearsal of what was going on, that it really was from 2012 when everything ratcheted up. Because I remember that's when I started blogging about the elections. And this is why I think the Big Bird thing came in 2012, that I was suddenly aware having voted for Obama the first time and aware that everything was going sour. And I live in his neighborhood, right? Or his old neighborhood. So it was like ground zero of, wait a minute, what just happened? Because like I could, we had Obama merch in the local Walgreens, right? This was
Yeah.
this was definitely his neighborhood. And I was going, nothing, this doesn't seem right. What's going on here? And
Hmm.
starting to read, outside of medieval history, but starting to read in all the political and economic literature. I read like half a dozen books of Thomas Sowell in 1 month, right? Which is kind of hard going. And all the politics and economics, and I was going and a lot of National Review, because after I did this reading for 3 years, I went on their cruise in 2015
Mhm.
and ended up voting for Trump. So don't call me brainwashed, guys, because if I was being brainwashed by National Review, I would not have voted for Trump.
Well, look at how methodical you were too. You said you had an idea.
Right.
You sought out some more information about the deep thinkers like Sowell who had written about this.
Right.
And it was deliberative. It wasn't reactionary, and it certainly wasn't brainwashed. I don't think you're capable of being brainwashed.
Well, I've also been thinking about this. It's like, why is my reaction to constantly look for yet more of the pieces of the puzzle, right? This huge puzzle that's out there and this pattern, and so I'm reading for pieces, I'm reading for pieces, I'm reading for pieces. And then, of course, creating the massive and enormous problem for myself that not only was I, vastly more read in medieval history than most of the ordinary population, but in everything else, right?
Yeah.
Which is, guys, you've seen the reading list that we put up for, a poem.
Yeah. It's still growing.
And it's still, we've been reading about red recently. And,
Yes.
and consider that I was reading like that for every class I taught. It's like in my younger days, right? It's like, I'm going to teach a course on war in the Middle Ages, right? Shelf of books. I'm going to teach a class on Tolkien, right? Shelf of books. And how many courses have I taught? I've taught over 30 different courses, and like new one every year for 30 years, plus repeats, which make me think more deeply about it and everything. This is kind of showing off, but it's also to give you context for the frustration that I heard when Kirk is going, I went to campus and I didn't need it. And Peterson is sitting there going, there's no education to be had on the campuses. And like,
oh come on.
Well, yes. Well, that's, that was at that time, one, that Milo was giving his tour on the campuses. And therefore I was obviously thinking about this because I'm going to bitch a little bit. I get in trouble when I do this, so I must contain myself. But of course, that's the time when Jordan Peterson said that, he'd been watching Milo's speeches, and Milo got deplatformed, and, Peterson was asked about it at a conference immediately after that. And he's like, well, he's a trickster character, right? And I wrote to Peterson saying, oh, thank goodness there's another professor out there who sees what Milo's doing, right? Which mattered a lot. And within, of course, less than a year, Jordan forgot that he had ever said anything like that. And by 2018 was talking to Barry Weiss at the Austin Festival, right? Or the Aspen Festival, talking about how Milo might be a racist.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and then if you listen to Peterson and Kirk talking in this interview on Peterson's podcast with Kirk, they both completely forgot all of that. They say something. They say something like, "Oh yeah, well, there's other guys that were out there, like Ben Shapiro, who's Peterson's colleague now, and Milo Yiannopoulos, and he had a lot of trauma, and he sort of fell away."
Fell away from what?
Oh, that just the public conversation
in general.
I say, could you remember your role in this, please? I didn't just like fall away. Barry Weiss asks Jordan Peterson at the Aspen, what's it, thing with all the wealthy people there, but isn't Milo a racist? And Jordan said, yes, possibly. I don't know. I don't really know him that well.
That's his answer to everything. I don't know. Not really. Yes, maybe. I don't know. That's his response to everything because, his fame, his usefulness to this person or that goes away if he takes a stand on anything, which is what Milo did.
Yes.
So it's almost like they're flexing, going, you better not take a stand, at least not the wrong one, at the wrong time, in the wrong place with the wrong people, or you'll go away too, just like Milo.
Oh,
right?
Very good point. Very good point.
It's a warning. And
I heard
think
it.
that's going away. And I'm sorry to hear that about Charlie Kirk.
Certainly heard that. And so I was thinking about that in this, my job, that because Charlie Kirk has never been to college, he has not encountered someone doing it in quite this fashion, right? And this is, I was also, everyone's been talking about the Douglas Murray and, oh golly, the comic that he was talking to, Dave Smith, is that right?
No, Uh, Dave Smith is a comic and a commentator. Yeah, probably him.
Right, and they were on Joe Rogan's show.
Mm.
And Murray was upset about, just letting anybody talk, right? It's like, how can you just let people out here in the internet say
What?
things about things that they don't have expertise in? I've read several of Douglas Murray's books, right? It's like I would all of these people I used to be reading, right? So I have some, some, and they're saying, well, you need to. Murray was saying you need to have visited the place before you're talking about it, and Smith
No, you
very
don't.
very rightly said back, well, if you visited Nazi Germany,
Yeah,
how are you going to
exactly.
do that? It's the past.
Right.
Right. So what we
Yeah.
can only talk about
Well,
the things that are happening now while we're alive. That means we have no history,
and
which is
pardon
what
me,
I
but
was feeling in all of this experience. It's like, what has happened to the past?
who, sir, who the hell is he to tell somebody who should be able to talk? I'm really getting a little angry about people still, after what's happened over the past 5 years, 10 years,
Mm,
all the debanking and the deplatforming
all
and
that.
the unpersoning, that somebody like Douglas Murray is still demanding people not let other people talk. Who the hell are you?
Well, that's exactly what Evita, I mean, her commentary on this was really, really excellent. It's like I can be proud. Being proud teacher is even better than being proud mom in some context, right? It's like she's taken things that we talked
Yeah,
about
a little
and
bit like a little the same.
I, it's somewhat, but it's like,
Yeah.
as a teacher, it's like, yes, you got it. You got it. You've taken it further than I did. This is excellent. Right.
Hmm.
And the feeling of the framing, right? How you frame the story. So this is what I realized with the Murray and the Smith conversation with, we're there, and everybody's noticing this, right? That, as you just did, each of these, all of these commentariats, the podcaster guys, um, are gently, in their masculine, enjoyable voices, which is fine because I listen to, that's okay. But, reframing how we can think about stuff. Reframe
Hmm.
and excuse me, that's called historiography, and I know your trick, right? You're telling us the
Yeah.
version of the past that you want us to remember now, and because unless there's, those of us old people sitting around going, no, that's not the way it was. I was there.
Right.
I remember it differently. And the thing is, memory has its own problems, obviously. So it helps to have both your memory and the records.
And it also helps to have the memories of multiple people from
Right,
different perspectives who are standing in different positions and could see things differently.
right.
I could see different aspects of things. You know, yeah. But people like Douglas Murray don't want that to happen.
Well, and this is, I mean, the fascinating thing, of course, is why, right? What, which story are we in now? And this is for me, it been, it's a meditation. It's like back in 2015, when I made my 3 Cheers for White Men post, I had a fencer's sense that was the thing that I needed to say. It was a really short post, right? And it was really the only post I made in 2015 on the blog because I was finishing my book
Hmm.
on Mary and prayer. And I said, I got this nudge. I hate these nudges because I have to do it when I get it. And then I have to, ride the wave that hits after that. Gosh darn it.
An itch you have to scratch,
Well,
huh?
no, I take them as nudges from Our Lady, right? So there you go,
Oh,
right? It's
yeah.
wisdom saying now, and you're like, no, please. Yes. No, you must say it.
Not now, Lord. You're having your Jonah moment. You're trying to run away.
Yes, yes. I just wanted to finish my book, right? I didn't want to
Yeah.
fling myself into the culture wars, for goodness sake. And but then I'm walking into campus and I get this. You need to say this, and I'm like, you have to say it. Please, no. Anyway, so I'm not getting any of those right now. So it's the, what am I supposed to say? I don't know. I can't see. I'm not sure where we are right now. Right? It's the
Hmm.
I'm hearing people reframing stuff. I saw something on X that I think Alexander McCrease said. I was there too. The Gamergaters are remembering, right? It was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Gamergate, right? 10 years ago. It's a short time in history and it's forever in lived time. That was a long time ago. And we're
Hmm.
it's like the Gamergate wave has finally crashed into shore and we're saying, okay, now what?
Yeah. Well, you mean specifically games, or if that was just
No, just
the
that
biggest
that sense
example?
of the thing is the Gamergaters are right that they're standing up against
Mhm.
the journalism that was telling the gamers that they had no right to say what they liked or didn't like in their games. I mean, even
Well,
and it wasn't even
yeah,
I mean to some extent it was just saying whether we could say they were boring.
right. And I think I'm thinking of the article. Whose Substack was it? I'm really sorry, whoever wrote this. I should credit you, but I can't remember because I read a whole bunch of them today. It was about
The mosaic has
yeah,
so many threads right now.
it's about Worldcon in Seattle being canceled because not because of any. This is the science fiction. It's like a science fiction conference
Mm,
that was held every year,
right.
and it's not because of anything nefarious anybody did, like Neil Gaiman is being accused of doing
Mm.
or things like that. It's because Chat GPT was used to select the authors
Oh yeah.
that were going to be highlighted.
Right.
And it's like, that's the hill you wanted to die on. It's like you canceled a whole bunch of other authors for wrongthink, and you canceled so many of them now that the pool is so small that you don't actually know any of them. So you have to use Chat GPT to select them, and you just canceled yourself. So the final cancellation is you canceled yourself.
There you go. And I mean that's appropriate that it's this closure on the Gamergate because it's a similar an overlapping population of people that
Mhm.
do the games and do the sci-fi and Worldcon and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're right. They were connected.
Yeah.
They were definitely connected because it's fantasy, right? It's fiction. I mean, games are fiction. They're whole stories that go along with them. And
Right, but it's a lot of the same. I mean, the con. I've only been to one Worldcon. I think it was here in Chicago, and I met a woman who was. I wanted to meet her because I'd read about her in my alumni magazine from
oh,
college, and Elizabeth Moon. Apparently, she went through like crises and trauma and canceling and such over something that I don't. I was. I mean, that's like in the aughts, right? And there was something that she said wrong thing. But she had studied with the same professor that I did in medieval history,
oh,
but like
cool.
the decade or so before I was there. And
Oh,
so
that's
when I went
neat.
up to her to say hi to her after her presentation, I said, I read about you in the Sally Port, which is our alumni magazine. And she's like, oh,
Nice. Very
right.
nice.
um, but yeah, so it's, the cons include the games and the comics and the
Mm-hmm.
fantasy and the sci-fi
Right.
and everything. So yeah, if it started with the Gamergators and it's ending with Worldcon canceling itself,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. It's the episode is like the stoning scene in Life of Brian,
mm,
right? Eventually the stoners all get, the high priest himself gets stoned
right, yeah,
for saying Jehovah. Right.
right. Yes, 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 yes. You can't say that.
Yeah.
Well, so this is what I felt like listening to Murray. I mean, and this is again what Avita was saying quite correctly. It's like so he wants people with expertise to be speaking it, and I would say okay, and this is what didn't come out in anything I've heard of response to this little episode. It's like I've read a lot of books. Okay, I do have expertise. I think the difference is between actual expertise in something, which is what, for example, one of the podcasts that's often playing as I wake up, the CEO interviews, they're talking about, I heard one where they were talking, I think it was the same show. I don't know. I'm half asleep when I'm hearing them. Talking about a guy who did um, FBI interviews, like,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about all sorts of body language stuff and how to set
Right.
up the room. And he's
Oh,
always
those are fun
talking
to
about
watch. Yeah.
how, the way they send the people in to do he wasn't calling them interrogations. He was calling them something else, but it's basically interrogations. And
Yeah.
I'm listening to that and saying, this is expertise, right? This is
Yeah.
skilled, you know, action in a particular field of practice. Great,
Yes.
right? I think, and the
Mhm.
thing is, I think we are in a situation where people want expertise, right? Guy stuff, like really great guy stuff when they have expertise and know how to do things. And YouTube is filled with guys showing each other guys how to do stuff with tools
Yeah.
and things like that. I know because my husband watches.
Yeah.
And I hope, certainly after 40 years of practicing, I better know how to do history. My dad always used to love to say it that way. may he rest in peace. Do you know how, okay, so they've taught you this or that at school, but do you know how to do history? And I'm like, yes, Dad. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, mm-hmm. If Murray had said something about, say, it's the expertise that you gain by engagement with the domain, okie dokie. But what he was actually saying was credentials.
What he was saying was, shut up. You're not allowed to have an opinion. Nobody should listen to you. And the only thing you're good at is telling other people not to listen to people who engage in wrongthink, which my experts, which I've selected, will tell you is wrongthink.
Right, but it's cancel. It's like Gamergate canceling
Yeah,
canceling
it's the
the
same thing.
gamers. It's the same sort of canceling. You're not allowed to have an opinion, regardless
Right.
of how much actual expertise you have in this domain. The gamers had, the gamers were the experts. They were playing the games.
Nobody needs to be an expert to render an opinion on any subject. You can always take somebody's opinion and reject it for any reason, including whether or not they're an expert. But to
Right.
say only experts are allowed to have an opinion is like saying only the landed class are allowed to vote. How's that any different?
Okay, so you and we need a different term here. Like, as Mel is saying, prefer expert pilots? Precisely, right?
Yeah,
We actually
right.
prefer
You're an
experts
expert
because
pilot.
expert, the Latin root, expertus, and I know this because of all the translations I've done and trying to figure out what the word means. When I find it in Latin, expertus means skilled. It just means
Mhm.
skilled. So yes, we
Right.
want people who are skilled in particular things.
Well,
And
see, this is what's
they've
so bad
corrupted
about
the
him
term
saying
because
that.
they take it and say
Yes,
they're experts, and what they mean is they're credentialed. And that's what
right.
this is what Peterson and Kirk were, are, oh, well, you don't need the credentials in order to have the expertise. And like, okay, I'm fine with that. The
You
credentials
don't need
used to.
credentials to have an opinion.
Okay, now that's a third category. You don't need the credentials to actually have the expertise. This I acknowledge, right? What the university system has done is turn itself into the credentialing mechanism, and now, having come out the other side, has tried to convince everyone socially that they're the only ones who can tell if someone has
Right.
expertise.
All while gatekeeping who's allowed to come through their university and get the credentials to be the expert.
Right, but they're not the problem is they're not actually experts. They're not necessarily skilled, which is what everyone's
But they told me
complaining
they were.
about. No,
And I should shut up. Douglas Murray said so. Anyway, I'm sorry.
no, I'm correcting you on the term expert.
No, he is corrupting it. And I agree with you. That's what I mean. To say you're not an expert, shut up, you.
I'm correcting him on his imprecision in the use of the English language. So there.
Right. The fact that he's doing it, though, is supposed to make us all scared and self-conscious and, oh, yeah,
Exactly.
I didn't go to college, It's a con game.
Right, because they've
Language
taken
is
the
the
thing that is
currency.
actually valuable, which is skill, and switched it out for credentialed.
Right.
And it's Caraggio saying their scalps are looking very scalpable and they know it. Oh, yes. Hi, Zeno DeBear. Good day. Glad to see you. So that's in unauthorized. We have a chat in unauthorized at the moment. Excellent to see
you. Been a while.
I know. Maybe this is, well, the devs at UATV, bless their hearts, have been upgrading.
Oh, that's good.
Well, no, I mean, there's a lot of things that keep happening behind the scenes that don't always show up in the user interface part of things. But building deep foundations takes expertise. Takes actual skill, not just credentials. We've lost the thread here. What were we complaining about this time?
I'm not going to complain about Douglas Murray anymore. So.
Well, I did actually. I remember when I was reading some of his books on Europe and things like that. But the thing is, I think for me, this is where we are in this sense of fog, right? Of the gatekeepers are rearranging themselves in front of new gates, or the same gates with new names on them, and
now they can do it without my tax money.
Big Bird. Big Bird has to go out and make his own way.
Or his keep.
Well, you're right about all the merchandising. They should usually sell enough toys. We had the Sesame Street puppets when we were kids. They were little plastic finger puppets, and they smelled funny.
Oh, I think I might remember those.
They smelled funny, didn't they?
They were made in Taiwan. Now, this is how old I am. Like cheap, kitschy stuff was made in Taiwan when I was a kid. And some
Oh,
of them were
right,
even
not in
still,
China. Not in,
right, and some of them were still even made in Japan. That's the
hmm.
really shocking part.
Well, okay, so here we are. We have made it in our inimitable way to the meta level of the conversation of saying, why is everything so hard to trace and confusing right now? At which point we have slides. I've got a jar of dirt. And guess what's
Good one.
inside it?
Yes, what's
Yeah, so
inside it? Yeah.
I've started rewatching Pirates again because we really need to know the details and all of this. But this one, I've got a jar of dirt. We'll start here. What's inside it?
Do you want me to tell you literally what's inside it?
Dirt.
What does he thinks inside it?
It's Davy Jones' heart.
Right, he thinks it's Davy Jones's heart, which is going to allow him to go anywhere and control everything, control every port in the world.
Ooh. You know,
Right?
the guys who wrote Pirates of the Caribbean, we're just like gonna do. We are not worthy. We got to do Wayne's
Yeah,
World
they're
moment. We're not worthy.
yeah, we really aren't. No, that it's incredible how much detail they put in there.
Oh, but
These are
the metaphors are so perfect. I mean, it's
yes,
the story is great if it all works and you have no clue that there's a metaphor in there.
yep,
Yep.
yeah. This was a well planned out series. It wasn't just like I can't cynically say, oh, they just made another one because they want more money. There's no way you can watch these and think they didn't plan this out, all of it out well in advance. There's just no way. The story just fits together too perfectly. It's just a perfect circle.
Well, I think with the first three, they did mean them to be a trilogy to start with. I'm not sure about 4 and 5, and
Because
I feel like there's some others that maybe I hope I haven't missed. My box set has 5 of them.
I'll bet that's because that's the only thing they could get greenlit was three, was a trilogy. But maybe
Right.
they had other ones in mind, and because it did so well, they were able to convince them to make some more.
Okay, we're losing topic here. Talk about the jar of dirt.
Okay, sorry. The jar of dirt.
Mhm.
Yes, the jar of dirt is
So
being.
this is I'm saying this is the answer. This is partly the answer. It's part of the answer of the gatekeeping that's going on with Douglas
Mhm.
Murray and his games about whether or not you need to have been there. And it's part of the gatekeeping that Peterson and Kirk are doing. You picked up on that better than I did. I just thought they were misremembering and being fuzzy. But you're right.
Oh
They're
no,
well, you're
no, they're not.
crediting them. I thing is, I don't know that I think Charlie Kirk is doing anything particularly devious, but I have not trusted Peterson since he
No.
pretended not to remember what he'd said the year before about Milo.
Yeah. Yes. The dirt is interesting. You know, it's well, what aspect of it do you want me to discuss?
Well, so I think it's the why are we being cautioned off talking about certain kinds of things?
So
And
the
it's
experts are chasing him around the Caribbean trying to get this heart.
yeah.
The experts would be the East India Company because we can control the seas better than anybody else.
There you go.
That's it right there. You can't have individual agreements with different countries.
I
You can't have. It's got to be free trade, and we'll protect it. We being the EIC, right?
yeah.
It's going to be free for them. Everybody else is it's going to cost.
We
There's
had
so much converging here. Even the DHS announcement about child trafficking that RFK Jr. made.
okay, put all of these things together. We've got now I put these slides on autoplay because I can't keep up with anything tonight because I
Sure.
can't. Anyway, so now we've got containers. What's in the containers? In the jar of dirt. What's in the containers?
What's the well? I got a jar of dirt, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What's in the jar? So no, I think this is you're helping me already come out of the dream a bit, right? They're gatekeeping on something. We're not allowed to look. We're not allowed to
Hmm.
be asking what and it, put together all the things that you see coming into the same container. You said you could
I'll,
do it. Come on. I can
I well, I'll try. I didn't say it would make sense or be coherent in any way, but I'll try. So I'll just freewheel it here. All the containers and the shipping yards, these are all West Coast ports.
mm.
Every single thing in those containers probably comes from China. There's probably also people in it. Unfortunately, they
Well,
get trafficked that way
Absurdistan,
too.
Elizabeth Nixon has talked about that, particularly the ones going into Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver. Yeah, Vancouver. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Oakland, San Diego, and those are just the big ones. Those are the big ones on the West Coast. And there's a whole bunch of little ones too. This week, our RFK Jr. said we're going to track down those 300,000 children because HHS was involved in assisting. He didn't say whether or not it was on purpose, but was involved in assisting in child trafficking,
Yeah.
slavery,
Slavery.
right?
So I
And
thought you're saying I know Nixon has talked about the Vancouver containers being reported to
mhm,
have people in them, but
yeah,
are those 300,000? I thought those were people coming over the border in like
those are just children.
trucks and stuff that the coyotes are bringing across the
Yeah,
southern border.
possibly, or
Okay.
they flew in, right? Or they
Okay.
could very well have floated in too from Haiti, um, and or Venezuela. Even I think they picked some up the ocean that way. And
Okay.
of course, the entire world comes into South America because Biden left the doors open and said, "Come on in." Right? We're giving you free money. They paid people to come here,
Right.
and
And then
when
they
you
can walk,
do,
they can come over the Rio Grande or
right.
yeah.
If those are the kinds of people you're attracting, you're going to also be attracting slave runners,
Hmm.
and that's what they are, and that's what happened to these children. They were trafficked away, and yes, they do come in containers. And all I could say is, and this is horrific. So trigger warning. The ones that came in Vancouver, at least they weren't baked to death,
Oh
because the
man.
ones that come by land over the Texas border do, because sometimes they're coyotes.
The trucks get stopped or they get
They abandon them.
yeah.
They abandon them and then run because I'm not going to get caught. I don't care if they're dead, And Tom Homan has a story about this,
Oh wow.
and yeah, and I don't want to put any more detail into that because this is a dark enough tale. But yeah, it's horrific, as you can imagine.
Well,
Um,
I mean, the darkness in all of these tales and saying it's like we've been being warned off, telling stories about lots of things because we weren't supposed to know about what USAID was doing in
oh, but it's
de-
U.S. aid. You're giving aid to people. How could you
destabilizing
question
countries.
that?
Which I mean, this is what's interesting about. Okay, we've done this somewhat on the stream. Remembering it's like why is Gen X, you and me, our generation, inclined to be suspicious about stuff. And um, one of the streams I listened to this week was maybe it was another Avitas, right, talking about yes, she was talking to the man who's the secretary for the Veterans Administration now,
Hmm.
and
I,
I
I
think
don't know
is
his
it a
name,
cabinet
but
position or is it a director? Anyway, he was talking about the Veterans
director.
Administration and how it changed after Vietnam War, in terms of the responsibilities that they had to take for the veterans. And
Hmm.
my dad was both a veteran as a doctor of that police action, and he worked for the Veterans Administration for
Hmm.
for the latter part of his career. So that we are those of us whose parents were, my dad was there in Vietnam, not in Vietnam, he was in Thailand, but he came back and we were aware of the fact that dark things had happened, but the only access we had to it was through MASH, which was imaginary because
Hmm.
my dad wouldn't tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, combat veterans don't like to talk about it, and they didn't used to be forced to talk about it
right.
all the time. They would just kind of just try to live their lives. And it's not that they were being discouraged. I just don't think there was any way to help them. They understood what shell shock was. That they understood that since, well, probably well before the First World War. I think it just,
They
I mean, certainly the
call it different
Civil War.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
called it they called it different things. Nobody really knew how to treat it, or that it was something that was treatable. It was just like, yeah, you've seen something horrible and it makes you sad and anxious. We get it. We'll help you as best we can, and that was it. You know, um,
Well, yeah,
Slightly off
Dorothy
topic,
Sayers
but
has it in her stories that Peter Wimsey has shell shock.
right,
Yeah,
right,
and he has
yeah.
nightmares that Bunter has to talk him down off of.
I read fiction in the past that had shown it and this was brilliant on this author's part to actually put it in there. I don't know if she did this on purpose, to remind people that, yeah, this is one of the hazards of war, is
Mm,
you create these people they're the walking wounded, and their wounds don't heal.
right.
You know, um, so we need to try to find a way to help them heal. So
Well,
obviously,
footnote,
God,
what the VA director was talking about is they're trying out psychedelics, and I'm like, oh goody,
well,
right?
yes, that's there. There's some promise with that because it takes away the fear of talking about it, because
Mm,
that's what stops a lot of people from being able to. From what I've read about that, I think it's promising. Of course, it's got to be probably a multi-pronged, effort, different types of therapies all at once. But yeah,
so I mean, this is we're tying it together as we magically do. How this works, we are never sure. What Peterson attributed Milo's disappearance to was trauma, right? Which is
the
true.
trauma being canceled by him. That's
No, no, it's no, 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 no. Just he's saying he made it. The passive voice is terrifically useful in all of this. He had a lot of trauma, and of course, not
hmm
from Peterson, but from his
I was making
abuse.
a joke. I know.
Yeah, when he was growing up. But that to a large extent, I mean, the world's been through trauma over the last 80 years.
Yeah,
And I, I'm wondering whether some of this feeling of I can't quite remember exactly sort of things is, I mean, at some point the horror becomes, if you're not addressing it, and we have and we haven't. I every year
yeah.
teach Primo Levi's description of being in Auschwitz, so some of the horror we keep looking at, but so much of the horror the stories are used to make sure we never look at.
Yeah, yeah, they're so horrible you just turn away because you can't take looking at
Or the
it.
gatekeepers make sure you never look there.
Right. You're not an expert. Shut up. Right.
Hmm.
So experts are supposed to be writing for everybody to help them understand it. They're not supposed to be speaking only to other experts.
Well, no, but this is why. Yeah, there are themes here in our thread tonight. Excellent. The distrust of academia is because it's forced certain perspectives and stories and the trauma of race relations, for example, onto
Hmm.
us, and refuse to allow us to even name other things. So
Yeah.
the feeling of um I'm as a medievalist, I'm more used to the you can't name the trauma of the Reformation as a bad thing, or that
Oh yeah.
we're meant to. It's not so much that we celebrate the French Revolution because we do recognize the terror was kind of bad, but oh look, it had good effects, right? So the what counts as horror is carefully gate kept.
I don't think it had any good effects, but
Well, you and as Catholics, have had.
well, even
I had I
even
had
as
one
a
of my
non-Catholic,
students. No, I had one of my students after class on this week because we were doing the Psalms. We were talking about the Anglo-Saxon use of the Psalms, and I'm doing this great account of the king's use of the Psalms. And the Psalms are battle songs, right? It's like the monks
mm,
chanting together or singing against the demons. And of course, Henry VIII destroyed all of those battle fortresses against the airy powers, right?
yes,
And that's not a good thing. And one of my students, I have a few actually English people in my class, and said, what made you give up the King's Church? And I said, Mary.
no,
Right? I mean, he was being gentle about it, and I was like, and I'm, it's like,
yeah.
at what point do you say this is, you know, uh, what is it there?
I would
The
have said
Reformation
Christ
is
is,
a terrible trauma, right? And Elizabeth's reign is a terrible trauma if you
yeah,
actually understand what was destroyed.
yeah, yeah.
But how the degree to which we're allowed to look at Elizabethan England as a horror, as opposed to well, Shakespeare's losing ground right now as a particular anchor, but as the celebration, the thing that you celebrate when you dress up fancy and go to Renaissance fairs, versus the abolition of the ability to praise God in through his mother.
right.
trying to be precise in my language here.
Hmm.
Right. But
Well, I don't think the Anglican Church gave that up, though, did it?
uh, they've recovered their Marian devotion in more recent centuries. That it wasn't so much a
Mm,
feature for a while.
okay.
Yeah.
And
It
yet they
had
still kept naming their daughters Mary. That's interesting.
true. Um, like William and Mary.
That's what I'm
She's
thinking of.
James's daughter
But
though, so
sh-
he was
but she
Catholic.
was a Catholic. Yeah, that's true. She was a
So
Catholic,
there
and
you go.
she was taken away and probably treated very harshly by the government officials and forced to convert to Protestantism.
And her sister was Anne. I
Hmm.
think we're seeing something here, right? So, okay, so
Yeah,
now I'm Jacobin. That what the degree to which we've seen this happen. I mean, Elizabethan England, it definitely happened when you were allowed to tell certain versions of the story and not others on pain of treason.
right. Yeah. Misinformation shall be punished.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So Douglas Murray is in a good tradition. It's like
Well, he's in a tradition.
well, and the thing is, the UK is playing true to colors, right? There's like, oh, they're losing their freedom of speech. It's like, what freedom of speech? The reason we're here in the United States is because they didn't let
Right.
us.
Exactly.
We left.
It's like, do you get it now?
Right? Do you get it now?
I've never
Not really been the good guys in this particular story.
I've never been impressed with Speaker's Corner. That's every time I watch some travel show about London, they go, "Oh, look, this is Speaker's Corner where you're allowed to speak your mind." I'm like, you only get one corner? How is
Right?
this
Otherwise,
something to
we'll
brag
string you up and
about?
call you Catholics. And
Yeah, but it does imply that you're not allowed to speak freely elsewhere, and which is being proved now because people are being put in jail for it.
right. Well, so we talked about this a little last week, the protests that we have on campus, because we had some more megaphoned enhanced protests this week. One of them that happened right outside my window as I was teaching, and so I went outside and I had a little chat.
Yeah, yeah, mine.
Well, by the time I got there, the campus police and the dean's on call were already there, and they eventually moved them out. And I'm like, here, look, you need to leave so that I can do my job, which is
Yeah,
teaching people to think. But this is not helping. But one of the things that some people who are obviously upset about some of the displays that are being used on campus right now seem to forget is, oh, I don't know, Guy Fawkes, which is hang the Pope in effigy on an annual basis on November the 5th.
you burn the Pope in effigy,
Oh,
actually.
burn the Pope. Well, they hang
Yeah,
people in England. They burn him. Oh yes, that's right. They do fireworks.
yeah,
Burn the guy. Money for
yeah.
the guy. You're gonna like do the human sacrifice in effigy. Okie dokie.
Yep.
Right. But anyway, so this is a long boomerang out from, or no, what does Joe Rogan say? Doing the weave here appropriately.
Yeah.
Weaving out from human trafficking.
We've now from human trafficking.
And we're not allowed to think about what's going on in those ports. So human trafficking, that was one layer.
Yeah. Oh, mineral rights. Another layer. Right. I got a jar of dirt. What's in it? Rare earth minerals. Right.
Right.
We just signed a deal with Ukraine giving us rights to their minerals. And Trump sees this as paying back for all of the equipment we spent, giving them to defend themselves.
I
How I feel
think
about
we've got the
that.
Panama Canal on screen right now, which means the jar of dirt's about to come back around on the song. We
Yep.
were in Arlo
Right.
Guthrie's Alice's restaurant. It's like, and it's going to come back around on the guitar here.
Well, it's all the same thing, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
it's one big blue marble, and we're all happy to be on it. But those ports. Yeah. So this is the main. So it's interesting. China has a wildly out of proportion trade deficit with the United States because we basically weren't charging them any duties on most of their things, that cheap things that they were selling here, like clothes and shoes and knockoff bags and things like that, and real ones. Yeah, real labels, right? That they were making on behalf of companies like gosh, what was it? Lululemon? Was that the one they were talking about? I can't remember.
Versace? No.
There's
some bags. There's some.
Yeah, they were Hermes, right? Hermes was the big one that was making a big deal about it. But And so Trump's like, well, no, that's not happening anymore. And it's not fair. He's right. It's not. It's if you're going to charge tariffs, we have to charge the same tariffs to give manufacturers in each country's fair shot. And he wants to bring them back here, and they are coming here. They did that the first time too, right? They will go anywhere to save a buck. They will go anywhere to save a penny, and I'm not even exaggerating. They will. These major manufacturers will ship things and transship things around the world twice if it means saving money. And they've been doing that, for a long time, for at least 30 years. That's my limited knowledge. At least 30 years they've been doing stuff like this.
Right.
And so there's a trade war going on now. All those ports that are playing in the background with all those containers are going to be empty soon because they're all Chinese goods. It's one way. We do hold the cards. China knows this. So guess what China's been doing to try to control that? Trying to control the Panama Canal, which ships goods from the east coast of the US to China, right? Or from Europe through to China, and vice versa. And it can go both ways, I suppose. But most of China's goods go to the west coast of America and Canada.
Right. Yeah, they just go across the Pacific. And
yes. One of the other things China's trying to do is get into building semiconductors, which is probably more of a motivation of their wanting Taiwan than any kind of saving face. I don't really think it's a saving face thing. Maybe it would have been 70 years ago when what was left of the nobility fled communist China and to Taiwan, which was nothing but a very small fishing village at the time. It could have been saving face back then. Right now, I really think it's about the semiconductors because they're trying to get into every business there is. Manufacturing, semiconductors, aerospace, all of it, ports. Belt and Road Initiative. Does anybody remember that? That kind of dropped off the news. But they want to.
They're still doing it, aren't they?
Yeah, they want to control. They want to control all the traffic. They want to control the Silk Road. That's what this is about. And so a lot of it's about rare earth minerals, which and very highly fine quartz silicon that is used to make them. Those are in Canada, the United States, Brazil, and where else do they mine this from? I want to say China, but China, they have a lower quality. It's still a high quality, but it's a lower quality than the other three I mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I noticed was that, the President Bolsonaro of Brazil and Trump of the United States were both very popular. Were both deposed under questionable elections. Both were attempted to be assassinated, had assassination attempts, and both they attempted to put them in jail. Both of them, right now. And these are two of the largest producers of the high quality quartz that's used to make semiconductors.
Very interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think it's an accident. And where's Canada in all this? Having very close ties with the CCP.
Well, yeah, again, that's what Nixon has talked about in her Absurdistan, that Canada is, particularly Vancouver, is controlled by China.
Yep. But with
the money and the
right, by the looks of it, with the permission of the Canadian government.
Well, that would explain the election this week.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think Trump ever wanted, you can't make somebody a state, the 51st state. But man, did they take the bait beautifully and just expose themselves. It's just like they couldn't wait to expose themselves and what they really thought. And now Carney, oddly named president of or prime minister of Canada, is coming to visit Trump, and I'm sure he's going to tell him off. I'm sure he's going to tell him off because he's strong.
Right, but anyway. we've been quite clear. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean is more accurate, like documentary than most of our current political theater.
So accurate. Right? I have a very dear friend who said, I don't care too much for those movies. I'm going to convince this friend to change mind about this, because I don't think she realizes exactly how accurate it was. My feeling is she thinks it glamorizes piracy. It does use a lot of humor
Mm-hmm.
and mostly humor in the stories, but the underlying details that they put in it to drive the story were so accurate. There was no difference between a privateer and a pirate. They were pirates. They hired pirates to work as privateers. It was the same thing. They just tried to put a little bit of window dressing on it. So, oh, if you're doing it for the government, it's okay.
Right.
And our own government's been doing this lately too, which is why I really don't like this. We have access to Ukraine's minerals idea now. It's too much like piracy.
Well, it's like at some point it's like at what point it was who wasn't a pirate, right? Which
Yes.
is to a certain extent also the point of the movies, that they're saying,
Yeah.
they're all pirates.
They're all pirates and they're also all slaves. Look what happens to the governor of Port Royal, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's killed by the EIC.
Right.
They threatened to kill his daughter, they killed him.
Right.
And they said, we have a contract here. We're in charge. We have our own army.
Which
And
they
it
did.
was really
Yeah.
it was a horrific point in the movie. Jonathan Pryce just played it beautifully. He's just a wonderful actor anyway. But the shock and the horror and the anger, at the injustice of the way he was being treated. He was being treated like a slave because he
Right.
was one.
Because he was one.
And he knew he was being treated like that. And yeah, he was eventually put in shackles. His daughter was too. She escaped. It's part of the story, but they enslaved the world. And it's still going on. And this is what so many details come at you at once. And this is, I think, and I mentioned this a couple of times before on our streams, but it was around the 2016 election where I was like, okay, I'm out. I'm leaving the table here because something's going on I don't understand, and I can't contribute in any conversation of it because it just feels weird.
Mm-hmm.
It started getting really weird then. And actually, in hindsight, just even on a personal level, things I noticed just walking out, amongst other people in public, and just the whole of society was just acting weird. It wasn't just that they were getting violent. Our country had gone through stuff like this before when you and I were babies.
Right.
I was born in, it was almost I'm a December baby. It was almost 1968. So I'm a couple of months old and the entire country is under curfew because cities are being burnt down and nobody's stopping them. Sound familiar?
Right.
This has happened before. Campuses are under lockdowns because there's protests. Sound familiar? Right?
Right.
Everything has happened before, but it felt a bit different as it wore on between 2015, 2016. It started around 2013 or 14. That's about the time I stopped working outside of the home.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I was discombobulated a bit because you're missing your routine, which happens when you quit work after working for 20 something years. But I don't think that was it. At least not all of it.
Well, you had that experience, and Charlie Kirk, this is what was interesting. I didn't really know his story. I just it was interesting hearing how he built up Turning Point, which was impressive, but that he was doing it around that time, right? So it was this like, and now to think, okay, so the Maiden Revolution thing was in 2014, so the action against Ukraine started then, but all of us were picking up on something around then. 2012, 2013, 2014, Gamergate, 2015, 2016, and it was so clearly, it's like this feeling. This is why it does help to study a lot of history and to do it in detail with the primary sources, because you start picking up the not the retrospective explanation, which is always garbled, right? I spent decades not understanding what was going on in the French Revolution because I kept reading about it, obviously, instead of the sources. And every speech ever is Robespierre's report to the Committee on Public Safety. Right? We must be virtuous and get rid of the people that are undermining us, right? And I'm like, wow, I've heard this before.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's like the same one over and over and over again. There was something else recently was happening. I guess I was reading my colleague Ada Palmer's book on the Renaissance, and I'm like, are you sure this is history? Because the problem with patronage and the problem with loyalty and such, and it's like, this sounds familiar. How much of this is like human nature and the way power actually does work in systems? So,
Right.
you study the history in the moment enough, and that, I could feel it as an event in 2015, 2016. It was clearly to me like these other moments when suddenly everything goes, upside down. That
I
you
think it started with Brexit.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was
it,
around then too. It was around the same time.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it shocked the hell out of the people in positions of power around the world.
Well, that was after,
That
that was 2017 or so. That came after
I
Trump.
think it was before Trump, wasn't it? Before the vote was before Trump. It didn't take effect till after. I think that's
Mm.
what happened.
Well, okay,
But
so
I think,
things were just as now with all the containers moving around, and we're saying, okay, something is disturbing. I mean, that there's a
yep,
disturbance in
there's
the
a
force.
disturbance in the force.
There's something disturbing all of these
Yeah,
things, so that you get multiple similar, like you said, with Bolsonaro and Trump, right?
yeah,
You see evidence of it, and in odd places, which is, the other. So one,
yes,
study history because you get examples of this kind of pro, pro not process, right? Event, right? Event is the best way.
yes.
It's like this, the event is happening, and certain kinds of things ripple out. um I forgot what the other thing I was going to say was. Darn it. the
And
other
that
reason
is
the
the
other
last
reason
10
to study
years.
history, I'll never know. Keep talking, I'll remember.
Okay. Oh, what do I say now? No. Yeah. So yeah, I think Brexit sent some real shockwaves because it was the first time, and it was the first time that somebody told them no.
Mm.
They couldn't control it. And lo and behold, you've got serious controls on any kind of speech. You have some idiot in the police department somewhere in Britain threatening to arrest Americans over what they post on social media.
When we're in
And
America, or just if we visit there?
when we're in America, we'll have you extradited. Yeah.
Extradited? We're not citizens of the UK.
No, we're not. And it's like, I'm sorry, don't make us kick your ass again. Okay? We did this in 1812. All right? This was why we fought you in 1812,
Mm-hmm.
because you were boarding our ships and taking our sailors. You were born British, you're ours. No, no, we're not. We're not your slaves. We're
Right.
not the slaves of the EIC either. And the people who are still engaging that kind of crap, they're going to have a comeuppance, and I think they know it. And I think that's what we're feeling. We're feeling the ripples coming back at us
Mm.
because it hit them, right? And they're still trying to maintain control over at least what power they can for themselves and their own private spheres of influence.
Well, they're
And I think,
definitely, I mean, the banal thing is they're definitely trying to keep activating, reactivating the fear spells that they used on the populace for the last, I mean, I think the 80,
yeah,
the meme that's the meme, the trope that's going around, people talking about the 80 years, that fits, right?
yeah,
That's the other thing that it's like, if you studying history, you get the practice that, yeah, 80 years is like from the first crusade that captured Jerusalem to the fall of Jerusalem. It's 1096 to 1187,
mm,
right? It's the and then um they hold on until the fall of Acre in 1290, but it's these it's less disturb if you, well, I don't know if it's less disturbing or not, but you study the history and you realize that moments of culture, sort of coherent moments, and this is why historians love fighting periodization, but it's actually more like these 80 years, and then you'll say it's like, oh, it's the long 12th century, or it's the long 20th century, or something like that. Maybe you're mushing together two of these periods. I don't know. It's
mm,
But you can feel it, right? It's like the
yeah,
Gothic only lasts about so long, and then something else happens. I think,
something
I mean,
happens. Yeah,
just like there's a biological reality to your own feeling of life adventure. There is also generational reality to, you know we're old enough now to remember back 60, 50 years, 50, 55
yeah.
years, right? It- the people who are able to remember 80 years are dying off now. So you're
Mhm.
just not going to have anybody around that can point to, yes, it was like that.
Although we have much more recordings of things that were going on and much more recordings of people's interviews. It's always
I don't
fun to
think
watch
it'll.
these.
I don't think it will be. I people don't study enough of the past. The living time is
Well,
the big effect on people's perception.
that's what's beautiful about the fact that it's been recorded on video, because
Mm.
people will watch that. You know,
Yeah, but people could read stories from the past too. It takes on a different quality if it's not in your lifetime.
well, I guess maybe that's fair enough. I might have a different way of thinking about it.
Mm.
I always think about, how many degrees of separation between me and the person in this being interviewed, who's,
Right.
okay, so, this interview happened in 1955. My dad was 11. This person, fought in the Civil War, so my degree of separation from this person, where he was in a studio recording this just miles away from where my dad was living at the age of 11 in New York City. So my degree of separation is two, from between me and the Civil War. I tend to look at it like that. But
Well, no, that's fine. That works. I'm just saying that the sort of sense of urgency changes after people are everybody alive from that period are gone. You you
okay,
ne- you need you
I'll
need
accept
you
that.
need life. You need people alive to have the urgency of meaning.
Hmm.
Whereas if it gets further back, it becomes, costume drama or interesting, or I mean, it's like nobody, truly, nobody is arguing. Well, maybe in Italy, there, the Guelphs and the Ghibellines, or well, there's some of the Lutherans versus the Catholics still from the 30 Years War, but it those sorts of things don't stay alive in the same way once the original uh,
So
actors are gone.
the reason it's 80 years is because the people who are in these, and I do think they exist. I don't know who or where they are. Occasionally, you get to see some of their minions, like
Mm,
Soros. He's a minion,
mm.
and but I think these families do hold on to power,
Oh yeah.
um, and once in a while, they try to push back. They're losing control, and then so they'll retreat, and then you'll see things start changing. I think when you see things like people being put in jail for wrongthink in England, or being put in jail for 4 years without charge or trial in Washington D.C., which everybody who's taken a civics class knows is not legal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it still goes on. These are the actions of people who are losing control and are doing desperate things to hold on to it.
Oh, I agree. And so the other thing that's out there right now is Catherine Fitt's interview with Tucker Carlson.
I
And
haven't seen that yet. That looks good. I want to watch
yeah,
that.
it's really good. That one of the things she points to is well, why Harvard is about to lose its tax exempt status. That
Yeah.
it's the ostensible reason that is the arguments that are being out there is about its DEI and its discriminatory practices. But I
It's more
think
than that.
it's the financial, which is what she points to, that what the real power at Harvard, one, it's endowment and its investments, and
Mm-hmm.
who gets to be on the board,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's the jockeying. She said the jockeying behind the scenes of who actually gets to hold those board positions is huge, absolutely huge. And those will be at the level of the people we have no idea who are, and yet what you're describing, right? The family claims to those um,
Yes.
situations,
Those positions.
those positions.
Harvard
Yeah,
never. I think Harvard never got rid of its legacy admissions.
I'm actually I don't mind the legacy admissions and things like that.
I don't either. It's a private college.
Right.
But
Having
why get
alumni
public
children
money?
as a part of the structure of the
Yeah.
institution, fine, right? But the why they're being got after in particular fashion, I bet there's financial stuff behind it that doesn't have anything to do with their educational mission. Does that make sense? It's they're being
Oh,
punished on the surface for things that they're doing because of the school, but I bet there's something else.
it's not even a punishment. If they're getting their tax exempt status removed, it's because they're a profit making institution and they're not allowed to be. And they're making investments that are making a huge profit. And it obviously are, because it's a
Right.
$53 billion endowment. I think it's probably more than that. Then
it's a giant money operation, right?
it's a money-making
Yeah.
operation. Yeah.
I'm still trying to remember the other thing about history.
I want to mention one thing though about things about them losing control.
Mm.
Okay, so COVID, home imprisonments on a worldwide scale was their last attempt to actually control people and control not just the election. I think they wanted to control people. That's dying too. I read a sad story. I can't even call it a sad story. It's a crazy story, and it's an anger making story. These two children in Spain were just removed from their parents' home because their parents have locked them up since 2021 because they're terrified of COVID.
Wow.
They made them mask and wouldn't let them go outside. So they
Wow.
totally bought that story and
Oh man.
stuck with it. And somebody was like, "This is too much. We can't let this." And God bless them, they rescue these kids because that's got to be just mental torture.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is. It's 4 years. These kids were locked up in the house with their parents for 4 years.
Wow.
No, you can't go outside, you'll die. That's a mental illness. But it's a mental illness that was encouraged by the government.
Yeah, those are casualties rather than agents of the
Yes,
right.
those are casualties, but
Right.
some official tried to put it to right, which is good. They could have just ignored it and just let them go on doing it, but they didn't. And I'm glad they didn't.
So I'm thinking about it's I've had very deep and difficult classes teaching this week because in Anglo-Saxon England we were talking about the power of the like where the power of the monasteries actually came from, and the argument is they believe in the prayer, right? Because otherwise you're going to make some other kind of institution. Although I'm not sure Harvard believes in the power of the education anymore. It's just the institution is so wealthy that they carry on the fiction of theirs.
Yeah,
Um,
they're riding on their laurels.
but it had the
Their
power. It has the
reputation.
power that it does because people believe in quote, the expertise that the credential claims that you get,
Yeah,
and we we do to our credit as a Christian culture believe that you need to teach people,
yeah. I
which
have a great respect for academia. I mean, for what it should be, right? For what you
right.
do, people like you do, and professors like you do. That should be the norm. Um, and it hasn't been. And I think it's because they've been too flush with money that they haven't had to care. And but especially the public institutions, I think, have been flooded with money, and in the form of student loans and foreign student costs that were fees that they can charge, and so they had a lot of extra money, and they had a lot of extra academic classes they could add that don't add any value.
Yes, I agree. I mean, it from from the surface level, it's just like the corruption of the purpose, right? That you're adding things
Yes,
that some people claim are
they
part
did.
of the
Yeah.
educational practice, but don't give you the kinds of skills that I'm
Well,
trying to
yeah,
give
and
my
it
students.
right, and it diminishes the reputation of the professors and the majors that have always been the standard in education. These you know academic studies like history and literature and maybe even economics, mathematics, STEM, that kind of thing, and then you just keep adding to it things, the proverbial underwater basket weaving, and if you
That would
say
actually be a
soon,
skill. Come on.
I know, that would be a skill. Yeah. So after a while, somebody says, "Well, I've got a degree from Harvard." Yeah. What exactly is your degree? Nobody would
Right, and
ever
that's
question that
but
20 years
that's the
ago.
bait and switch on, instead of it being an actual expertise, it's the credential itself that becomes
Yes.
so valuable. But then my other class is on Hildegard of Bingen, and there I was trying to get them thinking about the kind of projects they're going to do and what the problem is of framing a question if you want to understand the past and how to like I was talking about the movie that was made about Hildegard in
Yeah.
2009, the German movie.
Mhm.
And, so you portray the character in the situation and give them the costumes and the setting, but can you get at the motivations of the people at the time? Um, Likewise, that we're reading texts that, are insofar as we're not necessarily reading them in the context in which they were meant to be used. If you have, for example, Hildegard's book on the book on the merits of life or the rewards of life. Um, and it's meant to be read at meals and train you in virtue.
Hmm.
But how do you read that book, right? It's a practical book that we're not reading for that purpose. We're reading it to learn sort of about her rather than
Yeah.
for the purpose of the book. Um,
So this
Forgotten
would be
again
read.
what my point is. This is terrible.
So this
You can
book would
see
be
how
read
disturbed
to.
my sleep has been this week. I remember all the
Oh,
podcasts that I woke up hearing, and I can't remember what the point of my. Oh yes, so in both of those situations, the problem is the motivation, which I think is the big deal. This I finally found it. The big deal meta problem behind the jar of dirt and the
yeah.
the containers and things like that is sort of what's driving all of this. What is actually so in the Pirates movie, it's the East India Company's desire, as you said, to control the sea,
Yes.
because that's what in the jar of dirt is Davy Jones' heart, which if you have access to, I'd forgotten that element, you can control the sea.
Right.
And
Yep.
so the answer always in modernity of what is it you want? Control. That's what
Yes.
cybernetics is. It's the study of control systems. Everything is control systems right now. Whenever you hear
Hmm.
cybernetics, tell yourself it's control. They want control. It's Sauron. They, they want control, right? And
Yeah.
I do believe that monasteries function the way that they did when they have to be reformed regularly because people take over the properties and start abusing the gifts. But
Hmm.
it's because prayer actually not just works but matters and is meaningful. It gives meaning to life. And in when I was talking to both classes, I was sort of pointing them to the problem of, if we in academia are always saying, like, what is motivating people? Well, if it's power, if it's wanting power, we get caught in this loop, right? Of politics is downstream from culture, which is downstream from economics, which is downstream from geography, which is downstream from the dirt, which is right. So,
Yeah.
the only reason to have anything is to have control of the dirt. And then I'm like, okay, but that's not true, right? It's like you do need control of the dirt because otherwise other people will have control of the dirt and they will kill you
Right.
for it.
Well, it's interesting. Davy Jones's heart is in there, and David, like you said, if you control Davy Jones' heart, you control the seas, you control the oceans, all trade, all money, all currency, current, get it,
Current, yeah,
all currency, right? So he who controls the sea controls the earth.
yeah, the
Yeah.
earth, yeah. And yet,
Yeah.
the reason it's in a jar is because of love.
Yes. Or unrequited love.
Yeah.
Is it unrequited?
Well,
I guess it wasn't unrequited. Requited. He had a broken heart. He didn't want to have it anymore.
yes, he couldn't stand the pain of the feelings,
Right.
and so he
Right.
put his heart in a jar.
Yeah, love was too much. Don't want to feel this anymore. Oh, sad. Actually,
Who wrote this? These guys are great.
they're geniuses. They really are.
Okay, so if that's I mean, indeed, the movies as a series are all about finding your father and about love. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're straight up Christian fables. I get it, right? And that's in 4 that I was watching last night. It's the Fountain of Youth and the
Oh,
Spanish
yes.
come in at, spoiler alert. The Spanish come in at, these are old movies. If you haven't seen them, guys, um, they say this is a heathen, this is a pagan,
Yes.
sort
It's
of
taking water.
magical
Yeah.
thing, because you have to have the mermaid's tear and the chalices and do an exchange, and one person gets the life and the other person turns into a dust skeleton.
Hmm.
And the Spanish say this is diabolical and they destroy it.
Yes. Yep.
And they're right.
They are. This is what had. I have to watch that again. I've already seen it like 2 or 3 times. It's really great. He said, Christ is the answer to eternal life, not this pagan water, something like that.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
destroy it all, and they just destroy it all. And I remember watching this with the time my son was young, and the Spanish come in, and an English, very very impassioned Englishman grabs the Union Jack and says, "I declare this land for
Oh
England," and he
yes.
starts to
Yes.
plant the flag, and
They shoot
they
him.
shoot him, right? And then the Spanish captain says, "Somebody make a note of that man's bravery," right?
Yes.
And it's supposed to be this really funny line, right? And My young son watches this and he goes, oh, that's nice. He thought the Spanish guy was being nice
He
to him.
was. He was.
That's really nice.
No, it was, it's like, yes, it's not wrong of the guy to try to claim it for England, but on the
Yeah.
other hand, they're going to shoot him. But
I'm not sure that's how they meant it though when they wrote it like that, but that's how it
yeah, I
came
think they
across
meant it
as
tongue in cheek, but
innocence.
it is
Yeah.
actually like, the Spanish recognized the valor of
Yes.
their opponent, which
Yes.
is very chivalrous and honorable.
Yes,
And,
it was.
yeah.
It was a nice moment. He does get shot to death, but it was a nice moment.
Well, okay, so we've got a lot of layers here. We've got the problem of the way the credentialing expertise gatekeepers changing the story so that we know which parts of it we're allowed to say what happened. And we have the why we're being misdirected from paying attention to what's going on at the moment. We have the fact that indeed, because of the 100 days, a lot of things are all up in the air right now. And of course, I mean, for those of us who voted for this particular president, hoping that he's not playing misdirection on us.
Yes.
And in what way, right? It's like this bothers me because I don't think oh, well, we have to instantly assume that it's all nefarious and they're still gaslighting you and such. And it's like, that feels about that doesn't feel right. I'm going with my gut here, and I've been right for a decade. I feel the misdirection, and I feel the sort of lame efforts at reactivating the fear spells.
Yes.
And we've been talking to you guys for 4 or 5 years now. It's ever since we've done we had live streams on the Pirates movies at the very beginning, right? So we can point to it as we've been worrying about this spice trade, the Silk Road versus the sea roads for years now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, absolutely clearly the misdirections are all over, it's about the cultural stuff, right? It's like, no, it's about control of the dirt.
Yep. Control of the earth.
Yeah.
Literal. And today, and maybe always because of mining, literally and figuratively, the control of the earth.
Yes. Right. The actual earth.
Yep. Rare earth minerals, cobalt, silicon, the literal earth, but also the globe. Like,
Yeah.
you want to control it all.
So where are we now? Chat. We've been. I'm feeling like the stream has been either cutting in and out, or our streamers are saying this is too deep. We need to come back and listen later.
She's too angry. I don't want to hear her. I don't blame you.
No. I said we got Mel in there.
Ave.
What are these aren't the droids you're looking for always. And Zeno DeBear is still hanging out there. Thank you for hanging. The hourglass. These are the days of our lives. Very much so.
Yeah.
I guess we just hang out. I mean, it's hard to say what do we do now, right?
What do you do now?
Well,
now that you've noticed, what do you do?
Right. I mean, in the Mosaic Arc, we're going to take a break because I'm going to go to the medieval conference next week and talk to the medievalists and see what they're up to. And in 2 weeks from now, we're going to have another special guest with a great novel, you guys. You're going to love this. You're going to so love it. It's yes, we really looking forward. We'll tell you a little bit more about when it's getting closer to time, but you want to hang out. You want to hang out next week, 2 weeks from now with us talking to our very special guest. Who writes thrillers.
Yeah, I'm biting my tongue right now to not tip anybody off.
Thrillers set in LA, but that tells you almost nothing about the depth that he's able to write. And it's like we could say we know he isn't one of the writers for Pirates of the Caribbean, but we'd be unsurprised if he wrote something.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was
brilliant.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
be a
bit
surprised.
We've teased you enough on that, but I am sort of carrying on with my teaching, and I've also been trying to explain to my departmental colleagues that we as historians we're in this golden moment right now. I remembered what the other thing was. Yes, the pieces of the puzzle. So these two things you learn, right? One, that these events have happened before, at least in the sense that human nature is, as far as we can see it across the historical record, consistent. But two, the reason you need people who are actually skilled in watching all the different parts of the world is otherwise you'll miss part of the pieces. You'll miss part of the puzzle, right? And that's obviously been what's really fun about researching Draco Chemicus, but because I'm reading outside of things that I would know otherwise, and we're saying, oh, and there it is. So the newest piece of the puzzle that we got in Draco Chemicus was red, like the color red. You think, ooh, look, I've got my hat, right?
Yeah, not for the reason you think.
So no, but the red hats, right? If I wear this to the conference, do you think I'll get back, right? The color red. So human beings, apparently alchemically, the black, white, and red, right? Red. It's right up there before any other color. It's red. And of the things that came from the New World in those Spanish treasure ships, it wasn't just gold and silver. It was bugs. That they scraped off cacti or nopalary.
Bugs.
What?
Very potent bugs.
Very red bugs, right? The cochineals. The
potent color.
And yes, and that this is we talked about this a bit ago. Oh no, maybe I talked about this with Vita, the cochineal taken from the Madre de Dios, so stolen from the Mother of God. The East India Company was, among other things, founded to get more of the red, the actual red, like the bug red, because it made such a beautiful dye. And Aztec red is the red that people killed for. Pirates killed for red. My point being there, not the red, but the pieces, right? The where in the world matters most. And you think, why are we bombing the Houthis? Why are we worrying about the Panama Canal? Why are we worrying about Greenland? Why are we worrying about, Amsterdam? You can be talk about the misdirection, right? We're going to misdirect you because, it's the big empires that matter. We don't need to study this little piece of land over here. But that little piece of land over there, maybe where the bugs live, it's actually just Oaxaca, Oaxaca, that was, the bugs are very particular about their climate. So the cochineal insects can't live very many other places than where they are.
Okay, so it was like a silkworm type thing too. They've had to live under very, very particular conditions.
They had to have been the silkworms have to live on the mulberry trees, but they were transportable to different climates more so than these cochineal, I think.
Yeah. I thought they tried to have to grow silkworms in this country, and I don't think it worked well. But I don't remember too much detail. But yeah, the cochineal. I mean, if you're in a tropical area, that's the only place you're going to grow. It's the only place you're going to live.
Right. So here, Zeno de Bear is saying, sounds like we need a new mythos grounded in the mother. We just need to recover Christianity.
Just recover it. Yeah, it's already there.
It's already there. The mother is in Mexico.
She even made her way back into the Church of England. So.
Right. And so this is what's funny for us from the Draco Chemicus perspective. What the battle of all of this over is, the Elizabethan English versus those who still recognize Our Lady and stealing from her constantly, and the degree to which, without recognizing the Mother of God and therefore the real incarnation and therefore the real meaning of the Word became flesh, we fall into these piratical habits, I suppose. Because pirates, all of this, the piracy, you need the control of the port. The pirates are constantly an issue in history. Like Pompey. What is it? Pompey defeats the pirates, or Caesar does? No, Caesar does. The United States starts with fighting pirates.
Yes, well, the Marine Corps did. I think,
right? Yeah. Barbary pirates. Right here we are, pirates who were. Yes. And the thing the pirates do, and I was thinking about this as a backstory of Jack Sparrow and the Jar of Dirt. you were saying the containers have people in them.
Yes.
Yeah, the East India Company did a bit of that too.
Mm-hmm.
There's cool backstory that we found because of the internet, on the edited scenes out of the Pirates movies, where you learn that in fact the Black Pearl had been a slave ship, and Jack had been working for the East India Company and refused to he released the slaves or something like that, right? So yes, 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 Jack is a good guy,
You know,
even as he's a rascally pirate, because he refused to participate in the slaving.
mhm, right. And the ship was sunk and burned and sunk to the bottom, and that's when he made his deal with Davy Jones
Mm,
to bring it back up. And because it was charred, he called it the Black Pearl. But they should have left that scene in, because at the end of the second movie, when he's died, and they go visit, they find and go visit Calypso.
right,
There's all of these that look like former slaves that were in mourning because Jack Sparrow has died. And you're like, why is everybody in mourning? I mean, he's a pirate. Why do they care if he's dead?
right.
They were probably the ones he freed, right?
Ah,
He was supposed to
interesting.
deliver. He was supposed to deliver them, and he's like, no, I'm not doing that. He just lets them all go, right?
Right,
And
right,
and he was working for Beckett, and that's
right.
how he and Beckett knew each other. And that was the deleted scene. But they should have left it in, because it explained that scene in Calypso's swamp better, I think. But
Well,
why they
so
were in
then
mourning.
then then we get like, so why take it out, right? This talk
Yeah,
about misdirection, right?
yeah.
Who edited that scene out and why? And of
Because
course,
it didn't make any sense to me why they were in mourning.
well, but I mean, I mean, they like leaving you guessing on whether or not Jack's going to do the right thing, which
True, which is
is of course
funny. It's
dramatically
fun.
fun, right?
Yeah, it's very
And the thing
fun.
is, it eventually we caught on, okay. Even without that scene, we tended to get it, right? That
Yeah,
he seems to, if Jack's in the situation, good wins, or right?
yeah. He's Jack the Lad, right? He's not bad. He's just naughty.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and he's also, I mean, Sparrow. I haven't. I so I. This is like, the guys who wrote Monty Python actually had like studied at Cambridge, because that's where they got their start as theater, right? They did Footlights, I think.
uh,
Yeah, so they're the Monty Python guys, including Terry Jones, who actually wrote a book about medieval people. I think it's called Medieval People, but they did a television series about it.
hmm,
And the book is a nice introduction to sort of different. It's a sort of social daily life kind of thing. So
cool.
yeah, but so you can assume that if you find it in Monty Python, it's probably meant to be there, and we don't know enough about the authors on the Pirates of the Caribbean to know where they are. However, Sparrow, right? In English history, the most famous Sparrow is the one that Bede describes in his History of the English Church, when the counselors of King Edwin of Northumbria are deciding whether or not to become Christian. They have various monks and bishops and women, because the kings keep marrying these Christian princesses or queens, and then the women talk to their husbands, and you got to listen to this guy. He's got knowledge about stuff that you need. And the counselor, the very famous story of the sparrow is, it's a story about knowledge, right? That we who are in this life, it's like we're sitting in a mead hall, and they sit in mead halls a lot because that's where all the fun happens. So, like, guys singing together over beer. That's like the Anglo-Saxons. Trust me, I just read an article about it by my friend Martha Bayless. It's really great. It's like merriment. It goes with community. It goes with drinking beer in mead halls. They're sitting and drinking in the mead hall, and he says it's as if what we know in this life. It's as if a sparrow flies in from the outside through the mead hall, and then goes back out. And for this,
Hmm.
for the sparrow, there's light and I guess warmth and good singing while it's in the mead hall, but we don't know where it came from, and we don't know what is out there afterwards. And the line that Bede gives this counselor is, if this new teaching gives us more certain information, we should go with it. And of
Hmm.
course, the Christian teaching is we know where we're coming from and we know where we're going to.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the sparrow, right? This the
Yeah.
bead sparrow, but it's meant to be an image of what kind of knowledge we can have, and the sparrow we only know in this life as opposed to what's before and after.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I don't know whether that's why they named him Jack Sparrow, but it's
I don't either. But I
we'll
think I know
we'll be
why they named
attributing
Elizabeth
footnotes to
Swann.
them,
We found out why, well, we think we found out why Elizabeth Swann got that name.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to, whoops. I was
A
turning.
swan was a class. A swan was a. I think it was a class of ship,
Oh, yeah. We got our
right? In 17th century England.
right, right.
Yeah. And Eliza, obviously.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not
Elizabeth
Eliza.
Swan. We found no. There's a swan ship. So we are guys, just keeping you diligently updated on our obsession. Um, we're thinking a lot about the 17th and I mean, it's sort of the pirate time, right, from the 17th, early 18th century, and
Yeah.
more of the weird stuff happens in this century than any other century ever. If I hadn't been a medievalist, I would be obviously in the 17th century. However, being a medievalist means I'm more everybody in my field who only studies a century, you're the sparrow. You're in darkness before you go into 1600, and you're in darkness after you go out of 17. I do feel
Yeah.
like that. So indeed, trying to, we're in discussions on, regular basis in the department, because people come and go, sparrow like. I'm going to hold on to this forever. And we have to regularly make arguments for why do we do what we do, right? And my departmental the department I'm in at Chicago was crafted as a particular kind of um, faculty in the 50s and 60s by William McNeill, who was famous because he was doing world history, what he called world history, but became unfortunately famous for the book that he published called The Rise of the West, which was actually a world history. And, he's by 1950, he's like, oh, and we're at the top of the world. Ha ha. Well, okay. The sparrow flew out the window. But
Yeah.
what he was actually trying to get people to do was think in this big systems way that I was just describing, and that you need a faculty who can teach all parts of the world, because you never know which piece you're going to need. And what McNeill would do is hire people and then go talk to them at lunch and then steal their stuff and put it in his footnotes. People did complain about that, saying, he'd talk to them, and their research ended up in his next book.
Sneaky.
He would credit them, but it was the feeling like he was looking for the big picture
Yeah.
diagram of everything and putting all the pieces in. And
Mhm.
I obviously I read a lot of his books when I first got there, and I was delighted to be in the department, because I said, this is our project, right? We're supposed to be finding all of the pieces, and you never know where the next one is coming from. You need to pay attention to the patterns. Where is the
Yeah.
next? And I will say, of all the things our president does, he seems to get that. He keeps looking in the different places that you may not have paid attention to, and how he's able to do that, or why he knows to do that, I don't have access, right? But I do recognize that Trump seems to constantly he pokes in places, and then after you watch him for a bit, you realize why he was poking in that place.
Yes. Right. Or why he was talking about Canada be the 51st state.
Right.
It wasn't real. Yeah. But it did allow or force people to expose themselves.
Yeah, that of his I mean, one day maybe we can do a proper Trump stream, but that his technique is feint and see how people react, and that's a fighter move. He thinks of it as
No.
dealing. It's like I don't know, maybe it's a gambler move. It's a you make you fencing, right? I'm going to do that. What do you do? Okay, what if I do that? Okay, that's interesting. What if I do that? All right, okay. Don't hit, right?
Yeah.
And I just, that's the simplest way I see what Trump is up to usually. It's like he'll make feints, and then people react, and then that gives him information.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too.
And they're so busy being angry at, I mean, they're so busy being angry they don't realize that that was what he was trying to find out, right? What makes you angry?
Yeah.
Where are you going to react?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, Mel has been doing a great job. She's talking about what's in the jar of dirt: lithium, silvery black sandy dust,
Hmm.
right? And what we yes this so it's interesting. I mean, the slave ship problem. What you said about somebody else said this too. Maybe Avita. Avita, I hope you watch this one. Um, that the global economy was basically about slavery always. It's the globe. If you're
Right.
nations and you're defending your own dirt and access to your dirt and the people who live on your dirt and the food that you grow from your dirt and the skills that it takes to live on your dirt,
Hmm.
you're going to be, at odds with the slavers who want to grab your people and put them to work somewhere else.
I should mention one thing just popped into my head. One of the places within the United States that has very high quality quartz for silicon,
Mm.
North Carolina.
Yep.
There was a reason they were trying to get people off their land. It wouldn't help them. They were instructing people not to open roads. They were trying to they were trying to make people so desperate for normalcy that they would just pick up and leave, and then they could
Yeah.
pick up the land for a song.
Pirates.
Yeah, or more rightly in our country's history, carpetbaggers. You
Yeah.
devastate an area, and then you offer pennies pennies for an acre.
Right. Well, this is the sort of the I'm only about halfway through the book, the bread book. It's called A Perfect Red. Um, the because the cochineal insects won't live on. They can only live on those particular cacti,
Hmm.
and they can only live in very particular region. Somehow, and they're the Mexicans and the Tlaxcalans. Well, it's actually the Tlaxcalan province, which is ironically the natives who helped Cortez defeat the Mexicans. But anyway, uh,
Oh.
that they didn't manage to make it industrial level production ever. It's like somehow they resisted, which I'd
Hmm.
say we need to pay attention to this. Right? And I know I know I've heard the way you say this place name correctly, but I can't remember. How do you say it? Oaxaca.
Oaxaca.
Waka. Yes, there you go. Waka. Waka.
Oaxaca.
Yeah, you can say it, and I still can't. Say it again.
Oaxaca.
Oaxaca. How did
Yeah.
they resist? Right, because they were the ones that beat the Spanish at the Red Game.
Hmm.
The Spanish that come in to all sorts of other commodities, like for example vanilla. That only comes from the orchids that grow in along the Veracruz coast and need very particular cultivation. The people in Central America were doing some really intensive agriculture before the Spanish
Yes,
show
they
up,
were.
right? The
Yeah.
cochineal is one, and the vanilla is another, and chocolate, right? All of these, it's like
Hmm.
all these commodities that become incredibly precious in
Yes,
Europe, and for which the
they
pirates are
are.
going to try to control the seas. The it's They're multiple peoples, right? So Indians, I guess, what Aztecs, Wakans,
Hmm.
Tlaxcalans, all those. I don't know those groups as well as I know the ones around Santa Fe, at least in terms of naming them. Um, who lives on the land means what else can come out of it, the plants and the animals.
Hmm.
It's all bound together. We've got to keep these pirates from taking our people and plants and animals.
Well, we seem to be able to stop them in fits and starts, but they always come back.
Oh,
The
they're gonna
Empire Strikes
always
Back.
yes, they're always gonna keep coming back. I mean, this
Yeah.
this is. I mean, the reality of being in constant warfare in this life is well, the gamer game maybe it's the ride never ends, right? um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the
Such is life.
right, but I suppose what I want to know right now what they're up to, and I can't tell right now. I had and maybe I was sleeping and not really paying attention earlier, and that you only start feeling the actual thumping of the Davy Jones heart and when certain moments come.
Yes. Whoever they are always playing a long game.
Oh, very definitely. Very definitely. Don't let them misdirect you.
Mhm.
Here be dragons. That's our lesson for tonight. And the dragons will
Good
be with
lesson.
us until the end of days.
Mhm.
But we're out of time right now. So thank you all for joining us. Like, subscribe, help build the audience for us. We're doing gold stuff here. Like we've got the gold on the edge of the world. And if you watch us and hang out with us, we got to start making promises, right? What would you promise? You'll know it before anybody else does. That's what everybody promises on the internet. How do we distinguish ourselves? Market it, market it. Come on. We want
How do we
we want the jar of dirt. Come on.
We've got a jar of dirt, right?
Do we?
It's my intellect. It's
She's got a jar of dirt. My mind's filled with
she's got a
light.
jar of gold. She's got gold. I've got dirt.
Okay, everyone. Thank you, Stalwart Mel and Zeno Albert. Good night, everyone. Talk to
Right.
you in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks with a thriller. We promise it's going to be thrilling.